Thank you very much. So now we go to the first presentation after the coffee break, when you are so much relaxed. And the speaker, of course, is our kind coordinator, Giuseppina Padeletti.
Okay, thanks a lot, Joao. It's working, the microphone, okay? So, now I will try to present you in a simple way and a short way I can, not for the people of the consortium, but with the aim to outreach society and end users and stakeholders what our project is and what are its aims. I have to say that anyway the project is I suppose an important project, was considered as a good project, and we achieved the use of this logo from the European Commission. That is the logo for the 2018 that was considered is considered the European Year of the Cultural Heritage. So, first of all, who we are. The Heracles Consortium is composed by 16 partners, and among the partners there are big industries, small medium enterprise, universities, research centers, international organizations, and if you want to go deeper in the knowledge of the partners, I saw that there are some Heracles newsletters that were distributed where you can find these details, or you can have information on the project link. We have also two boards, an advisory board and an ethical board. And the municipality of Almada is member of the advisory board, is already member. So, why we are interested in taking care of cultural heritage? Because with the climatic conditions that are changing and the effects are under our eyes every day, the integrity of the monuments, of a historical center and archaeological landscapes are increasingly threatened. And we can observe extreme meteorological phenomena together with natural hazard that threaten this important heritage. Because it was also underlined today during the presentation from the municipality of Almada how their cultural importance is represent a source of information on the past, and is considered and feel as a symbol of identity from the community living in the area. And also the cultural heritage is very important for its socioeconomic value, and we are thinking to tourism and satellite activity and whatever related. So, which kind of risk we have considered? We referred to two maps that are delivered by the European Commission and are concerning the European countries. And we, in particular, we were considering the rainfall erosivity, so the erosivity caused by the rains, and we can see the blue are the worst countries. That, in particular, the Mediterranean basin and Italy and Greece were among the countries more touched by these kind of risks. And together also, they also have an important seismic risk that is considered a natural hazard. Just to show the effect due to to heavy rainfall, we can see the effect that we had in Italy in 2014 and that occurred in Volterra, where the city wall collapsed and creating the rainfall created an important hydrogeological risk. And so you can see that not only the wall but also the buildings underneath were in a serious danger. So we want absolutely to try to avoid, to prevent. Just other impressive images of natural disaster. In 1997, I took this photo because I think that every one of you knows Giotto, that was an important painter, Italian painter. So you can see that at the end, this vault with the important frescoes was collapsed. And please observe that only one vault was collapsed. And the reason why was that during previous restoration, probably we are not used the correct means to restore this kind in terms of structure and on materials used, in the sense that the materials that were used probably was concrete, not so elastical as the ancient one, and so to show how it is important to consider the way to restore and the material to use. So the threats to heritage, monuments, assets deriving from climate change and natural risk we can summarize in flood, storms, sea waves, extreme weather phenomena, rising sea level, effect linked to temperature variation, humidity, air composition, the pollution, and others that create altogether structural instability, material degradation, corrosion, and others. So in times where governmental budget constraints limit mitigation strategies, and I think that I am talking with people that knows this situation very well, there is really a need for an effective management tool for a cost-effective maintenance and restoration. And here the Heracles project is positioned. We want to give answer in order to help in prioritizing choices and finding solutions. We choose two countries for this study, Italy and Greece. The major motivation are listed here because the majority of the worldwide cultural heritage is in these two countries, and let me say also the related emergencies. Their ancient civilization are considered a world heritage, and also, of course, as shown before, on the basis of their similar risk, exposure, and emergencies. We made another choice that probably the policymakers in Almada can appreciate. We have not addressed important city and monuments internationally renowned, but we choose to focus on minor historical centers because they are representing the essence of our countries, our culture, our identity and economy, where people lives and works. Nevertheless, you will see that an important and outstanding archaeological site is present. In fact, we have, as archaeological site, the very nice, in Greece, in Crete, the Minoan Palace of Knossos, that is considered the center of the first civilization of the Mediterranean basin, and so is a symbol of our identity. And we considered in Heraclion the fortress of Coules. In Crete is an island, and of course the impact from the sea is very important. So the sea fortress of Coules want to symbolize all the monuments that are facing the risk of hazards from climatic change, but deriving mainly from the sea. And so sea level rising, increasingly intensity of extreme weather phenomena, salinity of the atmosphere that are accelerating corrosion that we can see after in some photo, and deterioration of the material and structure. In Italy, instead, we choose a medieval town of Gubbio, that is an historical town, but not among the most important, and this town wants to represent all the historical and monumental towns in Italy and in Europe that were conceived in the past when the climatic conditions were very different from nowadays, and now they suffer from the climatic condition that we have today. And here, particularly, we are interested in the hydrogeological risk deriving from heavy rains, creating flood and landslides, because this town is constructed against a mountain, and furthermore is along the Apennine chain that is a seismic region where a lot of recent earthquakes occurred, even in a very recent period. So, what we want to do? We want to develop an ICT platform, information communication technology platform. I will not stress this concept because there are the experts of the platform concept that will describe it, this part after my talk. But the important aspect that I want to underline is that to study a problem and to understand what we can do, it is important to perform on the asset, on the monument, and on the territory surrounding this asset. We have to perform what is called the context analysis, site health analysis, and risk analysis. This analysis, the context starts from wide area means, and for this, in fact, satellite will be used, are used, and then we move like a zoom toward the asset, toward the monuments to study the structure, the material, etc. And then also it is very important the risk analysis of the surrounding territory. All this information, all this data will enter in the platform, and representing a multi-source data about the multi-risks, and representing many useful info available for the end users, for the policymakers, for the people involved in first line, for a preventive maintenance and for restoration, for conservation, for so. We will see that, of course, we are testing and we are developing this tool on Gubbio and on Heraclion site, but the concept is flexible in order to generate a general applicability. Just to visualize in an easy way, so we acquire some information from the satellite, and I cannot image a wide means to observe our monument or asset, and then we go in the field and using different in situ apparatus to study the problems that are found to be addressed. And then also we have ex situ analysis to carry on in laboratory. So in few words, what we want to do from the context and site analysis and risk assessment, we want to provide answer in terms of monitoring and preservation action that can contribute to best practice and guideline, to develop new material and eco-solution for restoration and conservation that of course will depend on the site and on the monument you are studying. And last but not least, the safeguard and valorization of a cultural heritage will be done promoting the social and economic values of the communities, because we want to act according to responsible research and innovation. That is a very important aspect already underlined from the previous speakers. Now, just to give to you the flavor of what we have done, and we now are entering in the last year of the project, the third year, so still we have something to do, but just I want to give to you a flavor of some activities. So we start from the study case number 1 from Crete, where we have, the Koules Fortress and Knossos Palace. Starting from Koules, you can see how much the sea and the extreme weather phenomena created by the climate change can endanger this monument that in some part of the year I understood that is not reachable. It occurred, this storm, in October 2016, just, if I remember well, less than 1 week before our annual meeting that was then held in the fortress. So just to say. And for instance, look in the yellow circle. First of all, of course, we have studied and classified the different areas of the monument according to different risks they can have. But just to show, in the yellow circle, there is a big piece of rock from the breakwater structure that are created with the aim to protect the fortress, but that finally, if the storm is very important, can even be dangerous for the fortress because is acted against the fortress itself. So, what a part of the activities that have been done was to measure the water sea level and temperature, and so wave gauge measuring that have been deployed in the sea in front of the Koules Fortress. As well, we have collected information from the satellite in order to obtain information on the meteorological data on Crete in terms of precipitation and temperature during the years in order to have a trend to be used to foresee problems in the future. In terms of degradation phenomena on the materials constituting the fortress, I don't want to enter in details in the classification because it's not the aim of the presentation, but you can of course see the degradation occurring to the materials. There is a loss, material is lost, there is corrosion of the stone that is increased by the salinity. And the same if we see the material degradation phenomena in Knossos, we can see how important are the problems that Knossos have to address due to humidity that is compromising the structure of the palace. Here there is a very special stone that is used in the palace of Knossos, that is the mineral gypsum. Here you will see better some details. This stone are selenite blocks that present very nice optical properties, translucent, creating special effects when the sunlight is against this stone, but the degradation is creating a secondary gypsum that is completely different in the appearance, not guaranteeing this translucent, and also there is a corroded part. So for this kind of problems, consolidants are being developed to restore to the mechanical integrity of the deteriorated stones. Here you can see other example of the degradation phenomena touching the materials and then also the structure, because I don't know if you know that the Knossos Palace that you can see nowadays was, we can say, rebuilt by Sir Arthur Evans at the beginning of the 20th century, and he used reinforced concrete that if there are conservators now, you know, not only from Knossos, I know, but also for Almada, the concrete cannot be used in cultural heritage. But now, Knossos, as it is considered also a cultural heritage monument. So we have also to conserve and maintain the reinforced concrete of Sir Arthur Evans. So you can see the rebar corrosion, and even here there is a lot of corrosion of these iron beams supporting floor. There are also important structural issues. You can see pictures that are highlighting insufficient bonding between stones and cracks, major cracks. So there are a lot of problems to be solved. And we are addressing that. In the study cases number 2, in Italy, in Gubbio, so here you have a vision of the town against the mountain. We focalize on that building that is Palazzo dei Consoli. The height of the building is, with respect to the street, is a 60-meter high, and so it could create a big problem also if you consider that there are seismic events sometimes, and this picture represents a part of the town wall that in this case seems damaged, but in fact are the part better conserved because restoration were done, I would say recently, I mean 20-25 years ago. So what we have done by aerial images and also by satellite, we have identified particular critical zone. Here you can see that a part of the wall are destroyed. There is a lot of vegetation. I saw the same problem also in some images that the municipality of Almada showed before. So the vegetables represent a problem. Here you can see these are part of the wall that are not restored recently and probably also in the past. Here you can see a gap. Here showing that this part of the wall is lost, is collapsed. So only a small part of the external part that usually is much more beautiful and worked remains. And there are a lot of these. And look at this one completely covered by the vegetation. So here you can see some measurements on the wall in this cavity of the wall to assess the mechanical performance. So with a sclerometer and penetrometer test. For what concern problems on the Consoli Palace, you can see even here the problems of cracks created by the freezing cycle, the change of temperature from cold and high temperature, and the darkening of the stones, the blackening, created by the pollution. And here you can also see structural issue. Now I show you only some results, but there is a lot of work to arrive with a crack, because finally it was found that a part of the building is rotating in a sense and another part in another one, and so it's not very, very nice. Look at what we can obtain with observation by satellite. These are information obtained by synthetic aperture radar interferometry, and in particular by the PSP that are points, the satellite cover around the Earth orbits, ascending and descending. From the difference registered in the path, in the ascending and the descending, a consideration can be done about the displacement of the ground and of the building. If a thing that I have learned that if you see something green, it's correct, but if the color are not green, so you have to start to do something. So there is in Heracles a great work is consisting in the correlation of different data. This is also the strength of this project. And so these are the deformation that together with the structural modeling and also considering the variation in temperature permits to understand what is happening to the structure and which are the effects. So also in Italy we have some problems related to materials, and in this case binders are going to be developed. An important part is also the realization of protocols. This is a general protocols giving for guarantee the general applicability, and that means that if you have a monument and you have to, if you want to assess the value of the anthropogenic pressure, quality air, the effect of waves and sea level rise if you are on the sea, if you want to assess this risk, you have to perform this kind of monitoring and measurements. And then together with also analysis on materials, you can arrive to remediation and conservation action. So this is the general protocols. Of course, we have developed particular protocols for each test bed, and also protocols for more in-depth in situ and laboratory analysis. This is the visualization of the local Heracles approach, in the sense that we start from local to give a global approach. So identification of critical areas through satellite, airborne data, and historical data, link causes and effects through the local monitoring to arrive to, through info correlation, to the awareness and forecast of the effects. Last but not least is the activity evaluating the social, economic, and cultural impact of the project. Since the cultural heritage assets are more and more connected to the societal, environmental, cultural, and economic challenges, influencing lifestyle, feeling of belonging, etc., the Heracles project is really building a complex approach considering all these ingredients. And we are considering really the public, the impacts for the public and local communities. Also, we have University Uninova that is specialized also in this with the contribution of Professor Diogo. We are evaluating directly with the civil society of the two places this impact. And so we are organizing participative events that are very, very important, because the people, involve the people in this kind of problems helps in the conservation and maintenance and protection of the cultural heritage, because they feel to participate and to maintain their identity and their values. So I hope to have shown to you that we really answered to the three main aims that the project has. And I thank you very much for your attention, giving with the message that we want to contribute with the present through our knowledge and skill in science and technology, conserving our past, our cultural heritage, for passing it to the future generation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Giuseppina, for your presentation and outlook on the project and on the different sites that the project is studying. I would call now Jürgen Mosgraber and Francesco Calabro for the presentation on the Heracles platform. Sorry? Did I miss something? Sorry? No. He was caught off guard, sorry. He had an old agenda. So what we are going to show you now is that one of the Heracles proposals and outcomes was the production of a platform where information is inserted in terms of cultural heritage and damages, and that can be accessed from a computer. And so my colleague here, with the help of our computer wizards, will connect his laptop into the projector, and then we can see. So after this presentation, we will have a round table just to finalize the works for today, for this users meeting. And then afterwards, we will have some drinks and refreshments just to finish the day and send you off looking well.
Hello. Yeah, okay, so moving on to the platform, so you see the use cases that we have, and all that information gathered in those use cases should be brought together into this platform. So we have a lot of information coming from sensors, coming from models, coming from analysis in the lab, and also we have standard operation procedures which should be applied to the data. So you always have the question, how do you approach, for example, to get more money to do a project, or where do you start the project, where is it most urgent to do the work? And these questions, and this should all come together in this platform, which is developed in this project. Together, we are Fraunhofer IOSB from Karlsruhe, but also together with Leonardo and Thales, but also other partners are providing all the data, so we need to have everybody here in the boat to bring this platform to life. So what you see here now is this, what we call the dashboard. So this is the main view on the system, and you have a map view, so you can see where the locations are, and you already see some pointers here. So we have that one. We see our use case scenario here in Italy, and also the one on Crete. And what you can do now is here you have several of these tabs on the top of the system, which allows you to get to different data or to execute some actions. So the first thing we're dealing with is sensors and model data, which can be accessed here. So you can directly, for example, look up what is the temperature and these things. Then we have also the knowledge. So there comes a lot of stuff together from a lot of different domains as well, with different experts, which need to speak a common language. And this is what we collect in this knowledge base, we call it. And this is more on a semantic level. So it's not raw data. It's more abstracted data, for example, like you find out this wall is in danger because of a certain risk, and you need to do now an action. So more on that level. We also have messaging, which means you can exchange information between experts, but also collect data when you're in the field. So we have a mobile app, and for example, if you see there's a new crack, you can simply take a picture with your mobile phone of that crack and send it to the platform, and so you can automatically add that information to the system. And also what I said before, we have these standard operating procedures and also document management. So if, for example, your country or your local site has specific guidelines, how to do the work, how to approach things, how to write documents, we can support that with the system, so it guides you through that way how to come up with such documents. And okay, I'd like to give you a little bit of information of the background of the system, so how it works internally and what's going on. And what we call it is a sensor to decision chain. So you start at the low level with this raw data, and you will base your information, your decision based on this information. So we have that thing, we come on the left with sensors, but with sensors we have this very broad view, also in the lab analysis, and also meteorologic data and all the things we gather together with sensors. You need to aggregate it and integrate it to get a common view on this data and put it in something we call the semantic model. I will give you more information about what we mean with that. And then you will do finally your decision support. So I will walk you through these 4 steps and give you some ideas how we implemented that. So as you see, we have lots of different sources with data, and they are all very heterogeneous. So they are not the same, but we need them to bring together into a common model. And what we're doing with that is we're using something called the OGC Sensor Things API. And you might have heard of the Internet of Things approach, in short IoT, which is an idea everything gets an IP address and you can retrieve data from it. That's the main idea. And because of that, sensors got very, very cheap. And you also now get infrastructure for that, which is very, very cheap. So it's not that expensive anymore to put sensors anywhere, for example, in your building. And you can always in real time get this information. What was missing so far is an open standard to do that, and the OGC is the Open Geospatial Consortium, which is an international organization which pushes for open standards, how you do things in a geospatial area. And this very new standard is very easy and lightweight, and at IOSB we developed a server which is also open source, so you can download that from GitHub and fill it up with your data, which is very easy to implement in other systems as well, or integrate in other systems as well. I will not go into detail about integration and aggregation because that involves a lot of mathematics as well, but just to give you an idea what algorithms could be applied to the data. So the first one is just basically just looking at the data, and what you see here we have now from the console palace, we have the data of the temperature and a measurement of a width of a specific crack at the building, and what you can see is, if you would zoom in a little bit more, that the temperature relates quite very nicely to the width of the crack. So already only with visual analytics you get a basic idea of problems. Other nice thing is we found out is we have an accelerometer also in that palace. So we wanted to actually to detect earthquakes, but we noted every hour is an earthquake, which is a little bit surprising. So we found out this is actually the bell ringing every hour, but this is not the data we want to look into. We want to have the real earthquakes. So there was also now an algorithm applied to remove that bell ringing, so we get the real detections. So this is some example for some cleanup you need to do on your data. Getting into the semantic level meant a big challenge. So we started with, by doing a workshop with all participants in a project, because we first need to have a basic common language between all partners, because we have so many different domains here in the project. We have the main topic of the cultural heritage. But in that area, we have a lot of stakeholders. So we have the government, the local municipalities, all the experts, and all these people coming together. We have different standard operation procedures and different laws. We have this risk assessment thing. We have all those sensor topics. We have models. We want to do tasking on these models. And we have also this big headline about the climate change, or those climate change parameters needs to be integrated. We want to do maintenance and response actions based on our results. And there is lots of damage happening, and we also look into materials, not only the materials in the building currently, but also new materials which could be used for preservation. And you can imagine all these experts coming together in a project had no idea what the other was about, because everybody's an expert in his field, but not in a common field. So first thing was develop something we call an ontology, which means we have different terms and how they interrelated. That's the main outcome of this semantic level. then there's a question, we have now this raw data and we have the semantic level. So how do we bridge that gap between that? So the first way I've showed you already is this processing thing. So we can do automatic analysis, for example, also for thresholds with this processing, and can write that into the semantic network as a new information. But we also implemented the other way around. So if you see something like a warning or a risk, you can always step directly into the raw data and see what is that automatic result based on, and I can check if that really makes sense or if there is an error in the algorithm. To give you an idea, so this is this accelerometer I already talked about, which is placed here in the Consoli Palace. So you already see, you get some description about this sensor, some metadata, you get some nice pictures where it's placed, so you have an idea what's going on. But you furthermore can click on the right. So this is what I meant with that ontology, is that you have now these relations. So you see this accelerometer is a sensor, but it also has an endpoint, so I can directly get to the data of that sensor. And you see also it monitors data from the Palace of Gubbio, and so on. So you have also the interlinkage, and I will show you later on in the real system how you can navigate this. So if I click on that, I get now this real data, which is shown before with those spell measurements here of this accelerator. So I have this now nice interlinkage between those two. And based on this semantic level, you can also ask several questions. These are very easy ones, but the ones I started with. For example, we want to have all the assets, materials, risks in a system. And you can place these answers to these questions at different places in the system, so where you find it very helpful for the end user to get that information. And there is also an editor for that, so even a trained non-IT guy can create such queries. For example, we have here, we want to have all sensors which monitor the Gubbio town wall, about which Giuseppina talked about before, and we want to have this really in situ, so not the lab analysis, but the real sensor in place, and you get then all the applied sensors which are known by the system and can directly access the data. So what does decision support means? How can we now base our decisions on all that information and data in the system? And just to give you an idea, the first main thing, and I think the important one, is to bring everything together on one page. So this is what we tried. You already saw these drawings in the previous presentation. So you can also click on these things and get all the data which comes in there. We have some pictures, a presentation of the palace, and you have now all these links to get to your information and to walk through that information structure. But I will show that in live quick soon, which shows this better. We also have a geographic map, so you can navigate the map, get ideas, and also there you can directly gather the data if you see there is a sensor in that place, for example, here in Kules at the Sea Fortress. And I was also talking about the standard operating procedures. So this is something we took from the industry, which is very successful in the industry area, which is called the language BPMN. So to model your business process, actually, but we use it now to also model the process which you do your analysis, or in that example here, threat identification and your risk assessment. So this guides the user. So you don't see that. You see a user interface for that, but it guides you through the steps you wanted to do. And the nice thing about this is these things are very easy to change. So if you have different regulations, different SOPs at your side, it's very easy to adapt to these and to provide you, to support this with the system. As I said before, we also have a mobile application, just to give an idea how that looks and how that works. So you have also here a map view. You see where you are. You can, for example, then take a picture or write a text and send it to the system. So this information is added to your information space. And here you see, for example, messages I sent and so on. So much for the slideshow. I'd like to show you now a little bit about the real system. I cannot show you everything because it would take several hours. I think I just want to give an idea about the knowledge base, because this is the place where the information comes together. So we look into that one. You see it? Yeah. So what we did here, we have now two big menus here. The one is for the use case we have in Crete, and the other one is for the one we have in Gubbio. And you can directly jump here now in these aggregation pages. One here, for example, here we have the Knossos Palace. And for each you get this description, several pictures, and here also for the Venetian fortification. And the same for the use case in Gubbio. And what you see now, as I said, on the left, you have first an idea with some text and some images, what's going on here. So also someone who's new at the site or has now started new working there can now get information. And here you see what everything comes together in that. So you see your in situ sensoring, ex situ sensoring, assessment of new materials which could be applied to the palace. You see the models you have there and all those wide and close monitoring of the area, for example, the satellite analysis and so on. And this is everything is clickable. So if you are interested in a specific topic, you can directly go there. But it doesn't stop there. We have on the right, which is a more interesting part, is you have always that step into this ontology network. So if you want to get an idea about the domain, everything is clickable here. So you see this Palace of Gubbio is a building. For example, you can then click on the building and see what is a building and how is the relation of these things. And you see also here, this is also in two directions. So we see, oh, we have more buildings. We have also the Venetian fortification and the Knossos Palace. And you can also get the information about, so you see the building is cultural heritage and it's impacted by risks. So what is a risk? You can go to risk. And you see then this more complex network, how a risk works. So a risk can cause damages and it results from an effect and it applies to our cultural heritage. And you can this way navigate through that information and get an idea how everything works together. So you see we have different effects types, for example, with storms or a drought. And you can also go to that information here, and you see then again in it otherwise, so storm affects our walls and our palace, and so on. And so you can move through this network and get an idea what's going on. I'd like to show you some specific things maybe. If we go to, let's go to cracking. Let's go back to the palace. No. So, and you also see, for example, the models which are available for that, but you also see all the sensors that are applied here, and I can go, not here, I can go to that one which aggregates all the sensor information, and then you can directly see also the data. For example, the example I showed before, we have also now these two cracks who are monitored, and we have a temperature, and you can see that now in relation how that moves in that area. You can also get the details, zoom in, get different days and these things. So we can directly also look into the data as well. And go back. Yeah, and you also have, where do you see that? Yeah, you also see, for example, the material analysis, which is now also integrated. You see the limestone is used in that one, in a Consoli Palace, and you can also look at that information and go into that. And you see that you can see the properties and then do an analysis of that. And this will be now still getting filled more and more in the project if we have more results from the other work packages, but the basic structure is there as well. And by using this ontology, we can, with that system, pretty easy create input forms for that. For example, here you see input form for a building. You can simply say new and then create the information for that building. But if we know from the end users or experts that we need more attributes or more information, we can simply add that to the ontology and say create a new input form, so you can easily modify your data here without needing to implement anything. And what we also have in here, let's have a look here at, we also have now the, where are they, the stand task. Let's have a look at task. Oh, so we are. Yeah, you have also all the stakeholders modeled, an organization for the public sector, private sector, and so on. And you can also assign roles, for example, with that one, which then can be used also by these standard operating procedures, will be implemented in a different part of the system. And this is also the idea from these workflows we have then. You can also query this knowledge base, so it's not only accessible via that interface, but you can also access it programmatically. And then, for example, if you have different steps, get the information, for example, where did I get these information results from, and then integrate this also into reports you did. Okay, so much for my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. And I think that this presentation is very much to the interest as the utilization by general society and by partners located, in this case, to the Heracles project, but of course in view of an enlargement of the users, the possible end users. So this is just a great thematic to start our roundtable and closing remarks, for which I invite Paulo Diogo, of course, Giuseppina and Paulo Pardelha to join in this small. It is not to take too much time, do not worry. It's just a concluding remark, just to do a final overview of what has been presented. And in fact, the thematic, the first one, and I would invite Paulo Pardelha from the City Hall to say a few words maybe on how these cultural heritage assets can be a strong influence on society, on development of cultural tourism, and in the specific case of Almada, of course. Yes.
Okay. Well, just to make some shape of this round table, so well, I didn't know the project, so it's the first contact, and I've been reading and paying attention of all the presentations. And of course, although in Almada, in opposite with the examples that we saw, we are a little bit late not in the protection of the heritage, but in showing the heritage that is underneath, and with no function like in the old tower. The thing is that although it has no function in the example of the old tower, not only that building, but all the buildings that made part of an history of the how the municipality, how this territory worked, how people, what they do, what they, the activities that we had here, what the relation with Lisbon and with the South. So all the community, they are very sensitive with those questions, and also making some connections here with Almada that Luis Paquito talked about. Almada was closed, and since a few years ago I listened to people saying what is happening up there, because we have a wall surrounding Almaraz, what is happening out there, down inside Almaraz. We want to see, we want to discover, we want to understand more about our history. Of course, that we have in our museums, the history, but people want to go to the place. So having, in the case of the old tower, a no function, and we want to functionalize, we want to have a use, I think, of course, this project, it's very useful, because we are in a process to start something, some rebuild, not to maintain, because it is like you saw. So that's one thing I think it's very important to have the what people, what the community think about the importance of that building. So I think it can be carried for a tool like this, and all the knowledge, all the technology that we can put in the building to get from it the information that remains there. And I don't know, in like the site of the archaeological site of Almaraz, I think it can be also very important, although the structures are underneath. But I think we can, with these tools, with this project, create programs and that leads people to have protection strategy for the heritage, and to give the future a better knowledge about our past. So I will pay more attention to all the development of this project, and I think in our cultural area. Of course, I was talking with Luis Paquito, and he was saying to me that he wants to work with the information that, work with the project, of course.
Thank you very much. I think Paulo Diogo, as an expert on social studies, can have something to say also on society interaction with cultural heritage.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Maria Paula Diogo. I'm from the Nova University, from the Faculty of Science and Technology, as our host today. We are from the Department of Social Science, myself, my colleague Paulo Urs over there, and our PhD student Breno. Our main action within the Heracles project is mainly to find out how can we manage public procurement and also stakeholders within the project. Not only because we feel and we know that it's quite important in this kind of projects to understand how public and in general terms, lay public, can engage in such projects, but also to understand the perception that local communities have, first of all, on the question of the relevance of cultural heritage, not only as history, but also as active forms of business, tourism, and so forth, and the local development as a whole. And on the other hand, also to try to understand how these communities can be useful in solving some of the problems themselves. And in this question, we have been working with Josepina and also Patricia to try to find out a set of dispositives in a way, to understand precisely this interaction between the public, the experts, several stakeholders, business, researchers, consumers, and so forth. We have developed and used three main methods. The first of all, the one Giuseppina already mentioned, the World Cafe, with a very loose way to interact with people. Then we have also the MML events, which will be also used. And also in a last phase, a more structured way to be able to deal with stakeholders and the general public, which is the Mini Delphi event. In all these cases, we have exactly the same aim as the colleague that just mentioned before on the platform, and Giuseppina, that is to use this kind of expertise and approach to Gubbio and to our two sites in Greece, but also to understand how can they be extended to other municipalities, as for instance in the case of Almada. And during the coffee break, we had been talking precisely about the old tower, because in fact there is a problem concerning how to get to the tower, which it seems kind of silly, because everyone would think that it is possible and easy, but in fact it's difficult. There is questions of legal access to the land, and we feel, for instance, that in this case public opinion may act as catalyzing precisely this kind of action. So our main goal here in the project is, as I just mentioned, in one way to talk to the people at large, secondly to the stakeholders, and of course using the information coming from these two sources to build a general framework in which we can understand how to use this kind of lobbying in a way, and also to try to understand how can it be used within the question of risk assessment itself. The last topic we have been approaching in the project as well has much to do with the question of climate and extreme phenomena, mainly concerning the relationship within the debate that is going on how archaeology and social sciences at large can profit from different approaches coming from the field of this new concept, new in commas, of the Anthropocene. So we have been also trying to engage in this debate, and also our colleagues from the archaeology also have a word precisely in this approach. So that's all.
I think Giuseppina, as a coordinator of a European project, has something also that could mention on this aspect.
On this aspect. So what I can say more, what it was clear since the beginning of the Heracles project, and that the comments and the discussion of today are confirming, is that to conserve the cultural heritage we need a multidisciplinary approach. And so the technical is important, the scientific, but also the social, and the involvement of the stakeholder and policymaker is essential. And I have also to say that it was confirmed on field, just to use an expression, working in Heracles. And I can confirm, really, we touched con mano, with hands, we can say in Italian, that the civil society, when is correctly involved, they want to participate, and this is also really a factor determining, an important factor in the conservation, because really they have also ideas how to approach and to maintain and to conserve. Imagine that during the Delphi the World Cafe in Gubbio. There were, but I am sure that in Greece will be even more. People were suggesting to create a way where they can walking and observing problems, to take picture and send to somewhere. So our end users, because I have to say that the end user of the Heracles project are partners, and this is a guarantee of the project. They created in the website a place where to, and also in the platform there is we will create, there is this possibility. So I think that this field needs the contribution of everyone. And sorry to be pragmatic, but also there is another ingredient that is fundamental, that is the funding. So this is so to create a critic mass and to make a more incisive voice toward the authorities. Or I think that is important, and I hope that this experience can be a sort of seed and catalyze other experiences in guaranteeing a general applicability that we were discussing before. So
I would just like to add something that to stress what Josepina also said, that it's very relevant that the community does not see scientists and engineers as someone that are not part of their world. This is also from your World Cafe experience, not the black box, but something that's transparent and that they can address with their own problems. And this is quite relevant as well in the experience you have been addressing with us.
Quite relevant and not so easy,
No.
because it's a matter of ontology, like
Yes,
Jürgen was
difficult,
said.
yeah.
We are from different field and we are talking different languages, not only in Portuguese, Italian, or English, or whatever.
But
yeah.
is a normal person.
Yes, but also it's very challenging.
Yes.
So it's so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there is any comment that someone from the audience wants to make. If not, I would thank all the speakers for today and for all the activities that went today, that I went very smoothly and were very interesting. And I think that a special thank you has to be said to the City Hall and to the representatives of the City Hall that made available the spaces that we are using today here and the one that's going to be used for tomorrow during dinner, and for their availability to come and meet with us to discuss all these matters in the Heracles project. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.